Welcome to the Plant Cunning Podcast,
where we explore a relationship to plants, other people, and the mysteries of nature.
Coming to you from the high Allegheny Plateau in central New York.
We are your hosts, A.C. Staubel
and Isaac Hill.
Episode 78, Medical Astrology with Judith Hill, Part 2. So, we had a power outage last week. We had a late April wet snowstorm, and it left most of central New York without power. There's like 300,000 people in our area without power, and we didn't get it back for 4 days. And we had several interviews scheduled during that time, which we had to cancel, but we will get to those excellent guests in the future. And we were fine. It was kind of an interesting stress test for us to see, what parts of our lifestyle we need electricity for and what we can do differently, alternatives, as far as keeping stuff cold, keeping water flowing, and being able to do work like interviews and stuff like that on the internet. So for this episode, I'm bringing out Judith Hill Part 2, which we released the first part of this episode in, I think, January or February. And the second part was just for the patrons. And so now we're releasing to the public, which we said we were going to do. So I'm really excited about this episode. I had a lot of fun learning from Judith, and I hope that you will enjoy it too. Okay, here we go.
Wow. So that's just, it goes to show what you can do with that. And I guess the other part of the system that is important is the houses, because you can kind of know what house the planets are, as well as what part of the body by the sign. And so in speaking about how you can kind of pinpoint where something is in the body, also you talk about in your books that you can tell whether or not the disease or the problem is caused by a disease or a natural or a supernatural, if there's a curse or a hex on somebody. So those are things that I do happen. So would you be able to tell us how you can differentiate and maybe also about the houses?
It's into the subject very dear to my heart, the lost etiologies of Renaissance medicine. We have taken at least half of our etiologies off the palette. And so the Renaissance doctor did believe we had a spirit, did believe in possession. So did the ancient doctors, did believe in hexes, did believe in magical attack, did believe in fairies and elves and ghosts and weird creatures and demons. So all of these things can cause, they also believe that constipation could cause all kinds of problems, which we have ignored today, including mental arrangements. And so could shock and grief. They were much more in tune with the other side. So Blaugrave's Physic, you guys want a really amazing diary of a Renaissance herbalist astrologer who did exorcisms, cured epilepsy, all kinds of amazing things, talks all about, now he was very, very anti-witch, and so you have to be prepared for that. That was because he's reflecting his times. But this is it's a wonderful an account of how Renaissance doctors thought and their practice. It's put out by Astrological Classics, and Dave Roll did the editing. Now, so he describes how you can tell supernatural from natural causes. So you had your natural diseases. They believed in genetics. They didn't know what it was, but from mother and father. You could get sick from the air. You could get sick from constipation, because they were always constipated. In England, the diets were horrible. Meat, cheese, meat, pot pie, bread, cheese, pork, more meat. Every now and then you might get all bread and cheese if you were poor. Just bread and cheese, or potatoes later. So he had terrible cases of being bound, and they were always getting people unbound. And so he had that as a disease. You also could get sick from accidents, wounds, poisoning. So, but then you had your supernatural diseases. And they were very, very, they were also big on worms. They thought worms caused everything. Just worms, getting rid of the worms. And they had such unsanitary conditions in the city and farms. This was probably very true. So they probably all had worms. The average life span of a man in Shakespeare's England was 21 years old. A woman about 33, about a quarter of the women would die in childbirth, at least in the cities. So okay, supernatural illnesses. They took elves very seriously. You had elf shot. Now, you really shouldn't laugh about this. They don't laugh about it in Iceland. As you fly into Iceland, the speaker will come on and tell you in all seriousness not to insult the locals, that at least 50% believe in fairies and elves. They take it very seriously. Now, my neighbor did not take this seriously. And I warned her not to cut the hawthorn tree. We had a most beautiful grandmother hawthorn at the top of our block. Get all dressed up in her beautiful white wedding dress every year. Loved that tree. And they were just determined to do something. So they always, for 10 years, parked 2 cars under that tree. Now, if you harm a hawthorn, the fairies are known to take revenge. Same with apple trees and elders. And they will break a bone of the person who did it or otherwise wreak havoc. And the hawthorn also protects marriages. Well, so they were up there with 2 beautiful cars under the hawthorn tree. So they decided to cut the hawthorn tree in half and nearly kill it. Within 1 week, both cars were totaled by vehicles flying by under the tree. And within 2 weeks, the man who did it fell off a ladder and very badly broke his leg in 2 places. And he was older. So I know,
Wow.
these people didn't just come up with this stuff. They had lots and lots of centuries of empirical experience. And they did have all these EMF fields that might be chasing the fairies away. So they had things in the villages to keep elf shot away. And so they took very seriously. They also took, as did the Bible in biblical times and all times until now, they took possession very seriously. The taking over of a human body by either a discarnate human soul or some sort of evilly intent entity. And these can cause all kinds of strange disconnections and health issues, which are usually painfully obvious. They believed in hexing, which personally does occur. It's very, very popular to do. The #1 best-selling book at Powell's Books in the metaphysical section for years was the Satanic Bible. So I have seen many people who have been suffering hexes, and I've seen them instantly relieved of their problems once this is discovered. So these things were known. And now I would only encourage modern psychologists and doctors to think about, why are you ignoring the spiritual being of a human being? And we're not just physical. And if we aren't just physical, then half of us is being ignored. And yes, there's plenty of evidence that there may very well be a spirit that survives death. Lots and lots of evidence of it. That we can't pick one up and see it yet. So I always keep a tiny part of myself skeptical. But I've had enough personal experiences to, be a believer. I always keep open, though, to logic. But anyway, so in the chart, if you have the ascendant, and this is, when you're having, are you born with a tendency for being hexed or possession, or is it just happening now? So certain types of people cannot possibly be possessed because they're too strong in themselves. You need to have a weak self and an open door to be open to possession, like Neptune in the south, and they're on the ascendant, and you're a Pisces, and Pluto's on the 7th house. Other people are much stronger. And 8th house and 12th house have a lot to do with being possessed, particularly the 8th. So, if you're very, very weak, then, no, you shouldn't be playing around with seances and mediumship and stuff. You need a guard. A person with Mars on the ascendant and Taurus and Pluto on their midheaven and they're a Scorpio, they're not going to get possessed unless they try real hard. So now if you say a person has got Neptune in the South Node on their ascendant and they're a Pisces in the 8th house, and all of a sudden they're acting real different or, out of it, whatever. And you notice that Pluto is right on their Neptune in South Node. And maybe Saturn's over their sun in the 8th. You might suspect a supernatural interference because of who they are. And, but it also could be something else. So you always have to ask a lot of questions, which, when you go to a clinic now, you have 15 minutes with the doctor. They don't even have time to begin asking questions. They won't even ask what kind of bed you're sleeping on if you're having pain. Or what are you drinking all day? Alcohol? Nobody asks. I've seen this myself. So now hexing is a subject I almost prefer not to talk about, but 8th house ruler and the 8th house coming to life-giving points, the person will look under attack. Mars, Pluto, North Node are all hexers. Certain signs are much more likely than others. And so there has to be motive. You have to have an enemy. There has to be motive. You don't need any motive for possession, but you have to have a motive. So these are some things, but any connection between the 1st house and its ruler and the 8th and 12th house and their rulers, 6th house ruler, health, going into the 12th. Blagre felt the 12th house ruled hexing and supernatural. So he would look at the 6th house ruler and the 1st house ruler and what was going on with the 12th house and its ruler. You kind of look at all these ties, but you look at a lot of things. And again, you look at, is the person under attack and are they attackable? I know Scorpios who there's just no entities are going to mess with them. They're the ones who do the exorcisms. Some people just are so tough, like, why would I mess with that guy? I wouldn't, the bullies always pick on the sissy in the schoolyard, the sweet little weakling. So if you want this kind of material, read Blaugrave, you'll have a field day. You'll be sitting there with your mouth open at some of his cures. He describes in detail how he cured a woman who had some entity bothering her. And he would always choose his times. He would choose the exact time to do it.
That's amazing. See, that's the kind of stuff you can do with astrology. It's like, why do we forget all this? Yeah. I mean, we talked about why, but so.
And I want to say that the system that they were using, although yes, they were ignorant of many things, which we are today also.
Right.
Yes, they bled people too much sometimes. Yes, they did some very bizarre cures that seem absolutely crazy today, but they were able to do some things we do not do. They did cure some cases of palsy and epilepsy and certain kinds of insanity that we do not cure today. So why not? Why did we bury it? But I was going to say that this system is very similar to TCM. It's looking at energetic patterns in the body, but it's combining it with astrology and herbology. And so I'm always bemused that Western students are besotted with Ayurveda and TCM, and yet seem to be completely ignorant of the Western system, which was very, very similar and has all this ancient stuff going back to Mediterranean, Middle East, and Europe and the British Isles. That's just about elves and stuff, all kinds of things. Just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. It's so exciting to like dip the feet in there and just feel the water. It's good. Yeah.
I think maybe a lot of the herb schools and a lot of herbalists today really do have a focus of trying to, jive with the medical doctors or the MDs, and they don't want to be made fun of for astrology. They don't want to feel demeaned because the doctors already demean their field. And so they just put that distance between them still. which is doing just a disservice to, our students and our clients as herbalists. So
And we have to just stop worrying about what they think.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
should be worrying about what we think.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, like
Mhm.
we're trying to bring, because a lot of herbalists are interested in all these stuff. They're sensitive to these things. And it's just like, there's the psychic atmosphere is against it. The actual external objective atmosphere, as far as like people in power and doctors and everyone is telling you you're wrong, but we have to do it ourselves,
There's a great movement that is with us now. I'm teaching this class on mental health and astrology. And if someone were to say to me, as an astrologer, not a psychologist, and that field has done a great deal to help mankind, and it's developed its own methods. And if somebody came to me and say, how can you teach a class on mental health? You're not a psychologist. I would say, how can you be a psychologist without studying astrology? It's such, Young did, and it is such an amazing picture of all the inner workings and inner energies behind a human being. So I don't let this bother me at all. I know what I'm not. I'm not a psychologist. I do not have that licensing or training. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor, but I am an herbalist and I am an astrologer. But I know how great these fields are, and I know what they're missing. So I just don't bother me. But I can see if you were in those trades, you'd be really worried, because they can be viciously attacked and with hue and cry that their licenses be removed and attacked in their board meetings and so forth. But I will tell you, I have a lot of doctors that come to me and want a second opinion or want a reading or read my books. And it's just, they're all being bullied still. I can't believe this is still holding on after all of the evidence we now have.
Yeah.
But one day, if I get some time, I've got some studies designed where we can prove that medical astrology works. And probably that vocational astrology. Well, vocational, it has been already proven statistically by the Gauquilans that planets do govern certain careers. They proved it twice. Statistically, that has been done and done. They were replicated, everything. But I would love to, I have different designs that I think would show pretty readily in the right hands of expert medical astrologers. We could show that there really are, that this works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be hard to do.
Yeah. You seem to be able to design, experiments well. So
one idea I've had, I'm just trying to think about how to do it, would to be get 10 charts of people who died of a violent heart attack and who always had hypertension, but did not have kidney disease ever. So they have to be maybe older when this happens, like at least in a certain age group, and then get people who died, fairly young of, maybe by 40 of kidney disease, who never had any heart problems or even any sign of heart problems or liver, and 10 charts of those, and see if I could, and the time of death, and see if I could segregate the piles. These are the 10 heart people, these are the 10 liver people. I would like to see if I could do that, because some systems are very joined. And I would think a very good, very trained, experienced medical astrologer, we'd have to decide what that was, so that not just any astrologer can take this test. I think they would get at least 80-90%. But we'd have to pick 2 health problems that are not typically shown in the same chart. And see, from my experience, I know what those are. Kidney problems always show, and heart attacks always show, of the violent kind. Or dissected aneurysm. I like to get 5 charts of aortic aneurysms that dissected, killed the person. They'll be hard to get. They're easy to see astrologically, and the date it happened. And combine those of equal number of people who lived a happy life and never had any heart problems, and different type of person. So I really think, or people who have edema, really bad edema, versus people who are bone dry, atrophy. Compare these two types of charts. I think we could get some result there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would have to be done very scientifically. You would have to have doctors signing, giving the diagnosis on each one, so it can't be challenged later. A notarized hypothesis. The data would need to be sent to a third party who would open it in front of 2 witnesses who had PhDs. I've done this. You have to do this, because everybody always challenges your results, because it can't possibly be true because it's astrology.
Right. Yeah, and then you have like the replication crisis in science right now also. But anyway, I would like to go a little further on houses just quickly. So you usually use whole sign houses for your when you use this. And then I've been studying Lily a little bit, and for instance, looking at, like, I was just in Chris's class just looking at fertility, and looking at when Lily says, like, if you have a barren sign on the 5th house, but like he's using, I don't know if he's using, probably not Placid, one of those, not the whole sign house. So you could have a chart where, for instance, in the whole sign houses, you have the 6th, like the fertile sign with Jupiter in the 6th house, and like then air, and like a barren sign right before it in the 5th. But in the Placidus or something, you have like the opposite. Like you would looking at it from one way, it's fertile. Looking at it from another way, it's barren. So how do you figure that out?
By using whole sign houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was Lily wrong, or?
No. What I would say, as a staunch Placidian for 20 years, what I would say is use any house system you want, but you must keep in mind there's a cycle that goes under everything, a cycle of 12. And Arthur Young discovered the measure formula, where every cycle of motion has 12 steps, and they match astrology perfectly. Like start is Aries, and where things pause, when the pendulum comes up half the wheel and looks back, that's Libra. So we still have a cycle. So use any system you want, but any planet that is 6 signs away from the ascendant, 8 signs away from the ascendant, or 12 signs away from the ascendant will have some health weaknesses or health meanings. It's a little harder for the ascendant to reach over there. It can still have meaning in your Canopus, Marinus, Placidus, whatever you want to use houses. But if it's 6 signs away, 8 signs away, 12 signs away on the cycle of the pendulum, cycle of motion, it's a little can't be reached from the ascendant. Always has a health meaning. Just don't forget that. And that's what I tell everybody at the Academy, because we have people who love Placidus. We have a lot of Canopus people. There's all kinds. We have people who do Jyotish, the astrology of India. And so, you can use Jyotish, and you're going to have some different signs coming in. But, that's how I look at it, to answer your question. So you're fine with your house system.
Okay. So I guess that also leads us into like fertility, because that seems to be a big part of your practice. It has been fertility, and it seems like you can get really fantastic results. So how do you do it? And like, if, for instance, looking at a person's chart and they look to be barren, can you remediate that? Can you make it happen? And how?
There's barrenness and there's timing. So my approach is, if you look at the chart, and so you have different situations. You have a woman, you have to take a real intake. You have a woman who's had children before, but now can't seem to get pregnant. The first thing I look at is, if she is with a man, maybe she's not, but if she's with a man, I check and see if they have a chemical harmony. Maybe they don't. You've seen this all the time. The woman goes off and has an affair and gets pregnant like that. And she's been with the husband trying for a baby for 10 years with that. And nothing's wrong with his sperm. So I check that out. And then I look, is she going through something temporary or permanent? Was she born with a problem with fertility, or is this temporary? It might just be Saturn's over her moon right now. And then we wait. If it's a permanent problem she's had, like maybe she's had 5 miscarriages, that will be shown in the chart. There's a story I can tell you. Michael Bryan tested me recently. Do you know Michael Bryan? He has his own podcast, and he's really big on horror-y. And anyway, well, he's my private student right now, and my only one. So I can't take any more right now, but private students. So he just started giving me charts and saying, what do you think's wrong? I got this one chart, and the entire chart was out. It was about longing for children and problem having. And he says, oh, well, that's her problem. She just can't get pregnant. And she's very eaten up by this. So in that case, you have your herbs. You have your chamomelium. You've got your false unicorn root, which is supposed to even get weak females. They said don't use it in the case of weak females because they will get pregnant. Poke root is supposed to, at least Wolf was talking about, daily doses of poke root seem to get people pregnant.
Wow.
Have an effect on the pituitary. There's many herbs that you have to figure out what's wrong. Are they, then you look at what is wrong, what would match with this type of infertility, or should they just wait? What's going on with their nutrition? Very, very skinny anorexic women, or women who are running 5 hours a day for the Olympics, they have a hard time getting pregnant. And one thing people don't know, but they used to, my old research partner was a flight attendant, Jacqueline. In the old days, they knew that flying would cause a miscarriage, at least in the first part of the pregnancy. So the stewardesses, they were called stewardesses in those days, if they got pregnant, they would stop flying. So I warned a client about this. She just got pregnant, but she didn't listen, went up in the air, came down, had a miscarriage. So you have to inquire what's going on with the miscarriages. Are they just flying all the time? Is it something they're eating? Is it their environment? Is it the EMF fields in the house? You do a lot of inquiry. And then the other herbs. Now, say everything looks not that bad, and next Monday, my favorite story. I had a woman come in, this was years ago, and she had been trying with her husband for 7 years to have a baby. Beautiful woman. And what was wrong with this guy? Beautiful woman. She couldn't get pregnant. And so she came in. I looked at the chart, and she wanted a girl really bad. And it showed that very night at exactly 7 o'clock, she'd be very, very fertile. So I said, you got to drag that guy off the computer, which he was always on, at 7 o'clock. And that's your moment. And of course, conception will be a little bit later, but she did. She got instantly pregnant and had a most beautiful little girl.
Oh.
Now, we also use gems. I actually teach at the Academy the Jyotish system of gem remedies, which is also written up in the book, the Astrology and Your Vital Force, where I look at all the writers I could find and see if their systems matched. And there's little differences, and how to put on the herbs, what carrot, but generally some sames, and enough sames to be useful. So we teach this system, and you give the herbs, you give the gems, you give the date. I've helped people choose donors very effectively, and also dates of insemination for couples who are doing this insemination way, and had fantastic success because insemination is very expensive. So you get the exact moment. Now this takes real skill. You can't just go out and do that. You have to have real experience as what we call an electional astrologer. So I don't need any work right now, folks. I have way too much work. I'm just telling you what you can do with this, and I'm now teaching the system. But one of my favorite stories, if you like stories, is a woman gave me 15 donors. She had all their birth dates, and she didn't tell me anything else. She said, I want you to pick the one that's going to get me pregnant. And so I checked all their charts against hers, and she had one that had Venus on her Mars and Mars on her Venus and la-di-dee, la-di-da. And I said, this one. And she says, that one, he's already got me pregnant 3 times. But that was the one she's been using. But I keep miscarrying. But that wasn't his problem. So she was blaming it on him. No, it was her. So we work to, figure out that situation. But isn't that funny? So I love these stories because you see them, astrologers see this every single day.
Mhm.
I'm not unique. But I like to let people know how much astrology works.
Yeah.
There was a clinic operated for 11 years under Dr. Jonas in Czechoslovakia. There's a whole book on this called Astrological Birth Control. And all they did was help women conceive using astrology. They had an 80% success rate, an 80% success rate getting the gender that was desired. And that's not hard to do. I'm going to actually teach this at NORWAC this year. It'll be live NORWAC, unless it gets, turns into a Zoom because of COVID. And then I'll also be teaching it much later at my academy. But if you're going to NORWAC, you can see that lecture.
Cool. Yeah. So those are some of the places to learn how to do this would be to take your academy courses.
Oh yeah. We'll have the full electional course on there by probably June or July. Cool. We're working on it now, the full electional course.
So speaking of stuff like COVID, when a planet is transiting through a sign that everybody everyone has that sign in their body, so it's going to be affecting everybody. So for instance, Mars this year is clipping through the signs, and then it's going to hit Gemini. It's going to be in Gemini for like 6 months or more, right?
In August.
So then go retrograde and everything. So does that mean like lung problems or like yeah.
We have collective health. So this is, practitioners. I actually have a little collective health tips in that tiny green book. When Mars is in any sign, it'll tend to produce a little more inflammation or irritation as it goes through that sign. And as you have noticed, Mars usually spends about 2.5 months in the sign, but it's going to be a good 6 months or more in Gemini. Gemini rules the bronchial tubes, the upper lungs, and it also rules capillaries. Now, it's hot and it's dry. This could mean fire damage to some people. If we have more fires again, third year in a row or fourth, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean they're going to have many more asthmatic children for some reason. Now, if it's yet another respiratory bug, it would be, if it is, I'm not saying it will be, but if it is, it would be inordinately serious because we're having an attack on the upper lungs. And so you would want the cooling, moistening pectoral herbs and bronchial herbs, cooling, moistening unless the person's super cold. And people who are smoking, this is not a great time to be smoking. It's more agitating. Smoking anything, hot, dry, with a hot, dry astral wave. We can't see the cosmic rays, therefore we tend not to believe in them. But those who watch them will feel them. The day Mars is over your Mercury, you feel that. Usually a nerve gets a little twitchy, or you get a little pain or nervous, or you can't sleep. And that's why I catalog these in Medical Astrology in Action, because you feel them. Some are very noticeable. If you start watching the moon go round every month, you'll notice the same days you'll have trouble sleeping. The same days your knee will hurt. It's just amazing. It's pulling magnetic current and fluid a little bit more to those body zones. We don't know how much more. We haven't found a way to test this, but you can watch it. You all have friends, about once a month, they're complaining of being nausea, and they're drinkers, and it's always the Virgo moon, it's liver, liver's getting excited. So, yeah, that's a very good question. I'm concerned about that Mars in Gemini. Some people it won't bother. If you have bronchial upper lung problems or hand, arm, finger, also nervous conditions, it rules the peripheral sensory nerves. If you have Gemini issues, it will tend to excite them. But knowing this, you can offset it with the right remedies that a balance. Like I went drink a lot of coffee at that time because the caffeine jacks up the nerves, you see.
So it's a good time to quit smoking and quit drinking coffee if you haven't done that already.
Yeah, you won't need the coffee.
Yeah, you're going to be fired up.
Yeah, or switch to yerba mate, but you want to, if it can, it's easy to bring more cooling, moistening to this region with the right herbal knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like that's a really good part about medical astrology, studying it, is being able to prepare for those sorts of things. You can see what's coming down the pipe.
You really can, and you can offset or even prevent things that tend to be, coming or repetitive. I've seen that many times, definitely.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about like how to mitigate that. And I had a thought of like herbal steams, and that's very like moistening, but it's also hot.
Well, if you do a steam with coltsfoot or mullein, something that it will be hot, but it's still moist.
Yeah.
Moist is really the big one you're going to want, because Gemini will be drying and irritable and very irritating. So you have just every herbalist has to think, how to handle that. It's always something a little different. Some tinctures will help. Just help moisten this area. You might need a Pleurzy root or something.
Yeah.
So Mars is in Gemini. That affects those parts of the body, but also Mars is in an air sign. So does that make it drier? Or is a difference between Mars and Gemini than Mars and like Pisces? Like,
yeah, Mars and Gemini, that combination produces irritation of nerves. Mercury hates Mars, and it's in Mercury's sign. It's attacking. It's stimulating and agitating. And so, oils are protective to herbs. Oil rubs, eating more oil. It also is drying primarily. Gemini is not that hot as an individual sign. It sort of runs between warm and cool. It bounces around a lot. It's you'll get bouncing neurological pains. If somebody out there is fascinated with playing with knives, you have to watch them, because Mars and Gemini likes knives. Or ping pong, it speeds up the hands.
Also could be like, verbal wars, right?
You're probably going to see a huge amount of verbal, vitriol on and stuff without much foundation, just out of nowhere all over the web.
Not that much different than, normal time.
It's probably going to get much worse for that period of time. Or, Mars and Gemini is also famous for crime. We're having just terrific crime ratcheting up everywhere. Not everywhere, but some places.
California,
Oregon, Washington.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately.
Are there any other kind of transits that are affecting the collective that are coming up that you're kind of aware of, just like that Mars and Gemini?
Well, there always are. And so you always look at Saturn and where it is. And you always look at the transiting eclipses, particularly the South Node. The South Node is now beginning to go through Scorpio. So our South Node eclipses are going to be going through Scorpio. So we'll just talk about one of them. So this could indicate a greater tendency for issues with the colon, with bladder, uterus, nose, the excretions. Now, here's where it's funny. South Node excretes. So you could see diarrhea, more miscarriages, the whole thing with women having unsafe or illegal abortions is going to start. A lot of deaths, a lot of sepsis. Women aren't going to stop. I noticed in all these discussions on that subject, there's never 1 ounce of discussion on compassion for the woman.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Forced to carry her rapist baby. This is a psychological it's worse than horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible for that woman. But anyway, there's no concern for the female at all, only for the baby. Interesting thought. Just something I noticed for anybody on either side of the issue. No compassion for the woman at all. She's just being portrayed as a murderer. But anyway, and the word isn't comparable. But anyway, we're going to have a lot more sexual gender stuff. We're going to have, that's probably what I do is I match the aspect to what's going on. Oh, we're going to shut off abortion. What's going to happen? South Node Scorpio. Lots of problems, lots of illegal, lots of people messing around, not knowing what they're doing. Okay, then, so we have excreting. We have too much excretions, or it could mean weakening. South Node weakens, but it's also is excreting, and Scorpio rules excretion. So it can go either way. It can be lower excretions because they've gotten weak. And so you want to be watching all your outlets. You know, are your clients sweating enough? Are they excreting too much or too little? And this will be particularly apparent when we have eclipses around it, like we had one in November, but one coming in May. North Node going now into Taurus. So this brings a lot of energy to the neck, the mouth, the ears, the gullet, the throat. No sooner did this pop in than a very dear friend died of tongue cancer. Will we see a huge increase? North Node tends to produce cancers. South Node can, North Node's more likely. Are we going to see an increase in throat, tongue, esophageal cancers? Are we going to see an increase in deafness or mucus buildup in the ears in children? This is also, dental. Or will it be strengthening to these regions? Will they find a device that helps people hear that's better? Or, will they have new ways of dealing with dentistry coming in? But there's an emphasis on these two regions. And one where energy is coming in, one where energy is going out. So, people are having, say, buildups of plaque in their carotid artery or their jugular vein. You need to get more concerned about that because the North Node builds up and it's in the Taurus zone. It'll just potentize it. Now, these aspects, how much does astrology potentize something? Sometimes a great deal, sometimes a little bit. But if you have, 1% more plaque building up every day, that can be a big deal by the end of the eclipse season, which lasts a year and a half. So you get on that, you start, really thinking about these things. And you can see in the chart if there's a propensity. And also you combine that with the symptoms. So it's once you catch on, it's just like learning to drive. Remember how hard it was to learn to drive? And you can't remember.
It was mostly hard on my parents, I think. I was so rude. Don't tell me what to do.
I remember being so hard. And now you drive without even thinking. Once you learn, you practice this medical astrology, it's without even thinking. Your mind has things stored. You know what that aspect means. You also get psychic inspiration, which can come in like a dart, and you don't even know it's that. You think you're looking at the chart and getting it. But, these things are often very useful.
Yeah. It seems like whatever you put your effort and time into and you build the muscle memory for, that's where the intuition comes, so if and that's the other thing. Like, it seems like medical astrology, you have to know astrology, but you also have to know medicine. You have to know the body and the diseases and how everything works. And you have to be practicing because that's what it all comes down to is repeated practice and experience. Because you say it takes 20 years to really get to be a proficient astrologer.
Yeah, I study medicine all the time. I'm studying chemistry, herbal chemistry right now. In my spare time, I study anatomy and diseases. I'm way behind any medical doctor. But, I always say with the Merck manual and medical astrology, you're already well ahead of any Renaissance doctor. And if you have medical training, you are just really set because you really know your stuff. And I wish I was a doctor. That I'd had that full training. But I'm studying like mad. I listen to everything. I read everything I can. But I'm a student. And my expertise is with how the cosmic rays interact with the human being on all levels and with the body. It's my area of expertise, just like a dentist knows teeth. But as you said, I need to know as much as I can about etiology and the body, and I never stop learning.
Yeah.
If I get a case, I research that case, often for many hours. I research everything about that body because, medical astrology doesn't have everything. Even they did not know what the specific, every little thing in the blood was ruled by. They did not know what planets rule what distinct parts of the brain. They're still being figured out by medical astrology. So we have a rather crude template, but it works tolerably well if you know the symptoms and you know your herbs and you know this. But we still have a lot, just like medicine doesn't know. The medicine's ignoring all the stuff we know, the hidden currents, the spirit body, reincarnation theory. Medicine's ignoring all of this ancient past. And astrology, medical astrology, is trying to catch up with what we know about the body. It's an equal problem. And but nothing research can't solve. We have a data request button on the Academy for Astrological Medicine. So you can go in, you don't have to be a member, and request data. And I requested, I'm wanting to decide what rules the spleen, because some books have said Virgo, some say Cancer. So I asked for splenomegaly charts. I also have spleen rupture charts. And I got 3, just like that. I needed a case of profound autism, just like that. Somebody had 60 of them, all collected. There are other data banks, but here you can discuss. It's also, you can discuss with people and you can request something no one has. And so it's a lot of fun. So I'm still defining some of the undefined parts of the body astrologically.
Yeah. And there's only so much time and energy that any one person has.
Yeah, life is ticking by. I always say, I'm getting knee branches now. I better hurry.
So yeah, we are also starting to run out of time here. I would, if we can, talk a little bit about the vital force just briefly. I think that would be really cool because you have this book,
Astrology and Your Vital Force.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. And well, I've got Sun in Cancer, so yeah, I've got low vitality. I've got to be conservative with it, and that's something that it's important to know, and how to help with that.
So what is vital force, and what is?
That's the wild, crazy book that was never edited. It's just crazy. I should have wrote it, printed it. It's definitely a wild, crazy book. And it's like a manuscript right off my desk. But the vital force is the life force that we get when we take our first breath and we are born. It's apparently attached to comes from the sun. According to William Gray, we get a sort of our own little private imprint ray beam, and it's the vital force that runs everything. It's life. And so we all have a different type and quantity and quality. And if you have the different 12 signs, each have a different kind of vital force. The sun in your chart shows this. The moon shows the rate and the quality of flow of the vital force. Is it jerking around the body? Is it flowing smoothly? Is it going too fast? Is it meandering like a Pisces moon? The ascendant sign is the core. This is from William Davidson. He says it's the resistance of the wire. The body, the vital force is all running through. So we have, like electricity. Now, if you have the sign Cancer is known to have a bit of a weaker vital force at birth, or Cancer rising, and probably even more than Cancer. But this can be, if you have that, you can pull more into you. So the thing about the vital force is you can add to it from the universe. You could end up with a great deal of vital force, Isaac. We also dribble it away. And some people a lot of vital force. They're usually busy wasting it. They're the ones who are, having a wonderful time, boozing, playing around with people, partying all night, not sleeping. They have a huge amount of vital force, and then they invariably die earlier than the little Pisces and Cancer who was born with very low but cherished it. Totally the tortoise and the hare. So the Cancer type, the Pisces type, they do well. They're different, but they do well to eat foods that bring in more vital force. There are some that Emoto, the famous Japanese scientist, actually measured, and he found that certain foods like nuts and seeds, especially almonds and walnuts, citrus fruits and beets, all have very high vital force on his little Geiger counter. Edgar Cayce recommended a mixture of black figs and black dates cooked up with a little cornmeal and milk for some reason. I find just putting the dates and figs of any color in your mouth, a lot of them, and eating them will raise your vital force in a few days quite a bit. There's a lot you can do. Figuring out what drains it. Like Cancers don't do well with a lot of really bright, heavy sunlight. They usually are happier in the shade or happier up at night where it's quiet. And I worked on the telephone lines. Everybody at the midnight shift were all Cancers.
Wow.
And everybody on the day lines were Geminis. I mean, we're talking like 90. It was amazing difference.
Wow.
Yeah. So figuring out, Cancers get their vital force from water. So, but they say that Cancers and Pisces should be very careful with long soaks in hot tubs because it attenuates them, starts to drain because their auras are porous. So you want to be a little careful to always add, get cooled off. Don't sit in there till you're nauseous. But you get your vital force from water. So drinking lots of the right kind of water for water signs. Every sign, according to William Gray, great book called Know Your Magnetic Field by William Gray, all about this, or the book on his biography, Born to Heal, even a better book by Ruth Montgomery about this amazing healer.
Wow.
He uses astrology all the time in his work. So the earth signs get their vital force from earth, air signs from fresh air. I've noticed Aquarians always like to sleep with their windows open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's got Cancer rising and Capricorn sun, so that we kind of balance out that way. But so
that's a perfect partnership.
Yeah, but and then so making those sun waters that you talk about in your book, or the moon waters even, would be especially good for Cancers and Pisces and Scorpios don't need it, but
Problem with making these waters, they work really well, but if you make them right and if you store them correctly. So I've never quite figured out the method of storing them. I thought even dipping, one thing one could do is because there's how to imprint something. You could also dip an amulet in the water while it's out there on your birthday or out there trining you, and then wear that. And I don't know how long sun water actually keeps. Does it? And you have to cover it so it doesn't take other imprints. Does it keep 6 months, or does it keep a whole year or a quarter? I know it should work at least a quarter. It'll be very strong, and it's nice to have. And it works very well in an extremity, such as you're getting really, really ill and you're getting very weak. You get that on all your chakras, and if you have tinctured it with a little alcohol, drink it, and you'll find. Just wait. You'll find your vital force suddenly goes up a little within a few hours, if not immediately.
Cool.
Really, I'm sure that the method could be perfected in that book. I had to think it out because no one was doing it. The moon waters are more traditional, but they aren't doing the same thing. They're not jacking up the vital force like this. Maybe a little bit. They're doing other things. You're getting planetary influences and stuff. So they used to get moon dew, the old ancient people in the British Isles. They put out sheepskins, gather moon dew, or you gather it in certain hollows of trees or stones, on certain moon signs.
We're Alchemilia.
Yeah. Ladies
He's
still.
mantle.
Oh, yeah. So, but then you'll get the influence of that herb or tree.
Right, right.
Mhm.
It is
Right.
just great astrological dew. Apparently that way. But yeah, you can now you can waste and blow out your vital force, or you can make it much stronger and resilient. You just have to know your type.
Mhm.
Know your type and where it's stored. So Cancer people store their vital force in the breasts and the stomach. And so these are areas that are either going to be very strong or very weak. You'll know, but you cherish them, and you know, good food, good comfort food for cancers is really, really important. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say so.
That checks.
opposite type, very different. But you have Cancer rising, so you've got both. That's interesting. Those are always tough for me when people are born with their opposite sign rising. How do you work with that?
Yeah.
Then you have the whole pole. There's the nutritive pole. Capricorn's building bones, and Cancer's the water, and make sure the also Cancer's also the thoracic duct, keeping that clear, very important for a Cancerian. Very moon related, and Cancers respond more to the moon. You might do better with moon water. They do respond more to the moon than the sun as a rule.
Mm.
And you have that look of a Cancer. So I think
The mooniness.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's another thing. Well, we don't have to talk about that. She's got Mars and Aries too on the midheaven. So she's got, people think she's a redhead sometimes. She's not quite, but yeah.
I am too. I'm not. I should show the one last book that I wanted to show. I have a couple other books, but this one, the astrological body types.
Mm.
This one's 30 years old, in about 6 months, and it has all the element types, the planet types, and all 12 sun types with over 100 drawings that I did. And just sort of things you look for, that signs tend to produce certain things. And it's probably because the human being has 12 months of possible conception, and the baby's being prepared for birth 9 months later.
Mm.
So this baby being prepared to be born in the middle of May. Oh my God, they're just gonna great appetite. Everything's for them. Very different than if you're going to be born in the middle of winter where there's no food in the northern hemisphere.
Mm.
So you have these very different body types that, and how does this work with genetics? There's a lot of different thoughts on that, but we do have epigenes, and they know that epigenes are influenced by many mysterious factors. And there's a book just came out, and I honestly cannot remember the name of it, but I think it's by Lipton or Liston, and it has the secret to how astrology might work to influence the epigenes in that book. He doesn't know he wrote that up because he's talking about epigenes and mysterious influences, but he doesn't. It's like, oh, well, that's how, that's why I shouldn't look this way. I'm there's no way my two parents should have produced a very fair individual who's tall.
Mm.
And they had maybe one chance in 10 of doing so. And,
Wow.
and the chart looks like this. So, how does this keep happening? And so your chart does have something to do with what you look like, if not a great deal, but we don't really know the reason. It's very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like every time I'm reading your books, it's just like there's 10 more books I've got to get.
Yeah.
and
we
then
definitely need all of your books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. I think it's still available on Sun Signs. Matthew Wood and I just finished a really world-class 12. We did the 12 medical sun signs. I would take the first hour, discuss every possible physical thing known about the sun signs and their, and then he would take the second hour and do herbs. And so it's the medical sun sign and herbs. And we just finished it, and it's available at the Matthew Wood Institute still. And they're going to be putting it on the Academy as well soon, but it's still there and you can still get it.
Awesome. Cool. Very cool.
Well, this has been fantastic. I feel like 2 hours have just flown by like nothing.
Oh, it's been fun. And it's just so nice to be in company of people who aren't throwing tomatoes.
Yeah, no, not on this podcast.
Like minds that we appreciate these things and how useful they are. So it's been to have this plant cunning podcast. I mean, that is fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a lot of fun so far. We got to talk to interesting people like you, every week pretty much. And like we wouldn't have wouldn't have the chance to do that otherwise. And then everyone else gets to listen too if they want to.
When you air it, and I know you had Matthew on recently, which will be a lot of fun too.
Yeah. We talked about the extracellular matrix, which was just like also very mind-blowing reading that book and like seeing how it all fits together.
And affirming too.
Yeah.
Kind of affirms.
The extracellular matrix must be a way astrology is working as well.
Yeah.
There was a Burl Payne said that we're made out of mostly hydrogen atoms, and that the hydrogen, the proton in the hydrogen atom is free to wiggle around in any direction. And he thought that astrology influenced us through the water in our body and the air, how the planets influenced through vibration. I thought, I wrote a little section in the Vital Force book about it, about his work, Burl Payne, a PhD. And he was a physicist I knew, a fantastic man, just died. But he was one of these scientists who was really studying astrological sorts of effects on the planet.
Very cool.
Thank you. We're probably over talking, but thank you, AC. And
thank you. And remind everybody again where to find your work online. JudithHillAstrology.com, JudithHillAstrology.com, and you'll have if you want to go to the Academy, there's a button right in the corner. We'll take you right there, or you can see my books, bio. But yeah, that's the easiest way to get to the Academy. And
excellent.
Thank you for everything. And
thank you.
Really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.